Welcome to the HRchat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit HRgazette.com.
Tom Oxley, welcome to the HR Chat Show. Why don't you take a couple of minutes and tell our listeners about yourself?
So I've had 3 careers. The first one was in public relations. The second one was in corporate responsibility. And this third one has been in mental health in the workplace. I've been doing it for about a decade. And I do 2 things. I review organizations, how they support people on mental health or not. And I train people. I talk some training for leaders, managers, and non-managing staff. So I really like to get into I rummage around the underwear drawers of an organization, find out what it's really like to work there and to experience poor mental health. I will interview people who've experienced things like stress, anxiety, depression. I will talk to managers about what the processes are like. I'll talk to the HR team about policies and practices. I'll talk to stakeholders. I will really get to know an organization and play back what it's like to feel ill while working for them and how they can improve that support process. And that's what I do for them. And I know in my heart that is a personal passion coming from when I wasn't very well and had to have 3 months out of work, really not really knowing what I was doing or where I was going. Was very unwell. Luckily, I was quite well supported, but it's been a mission of mine to enable organisations to support their people and get it right for them and get it right for the organisation.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the HR Chat podcast. If you enjoy the audio content we produce, you'll love our articles on the HR Gazette. Learn more at HRgazette.com. And now, back to the show.
Okay, thank you very much. So, listeners, before this conversation with Tom today, I was walking my dogs and I was re-listening to Tom's TED Talk from a few years back. In it, Tom, one thing that you mentioned, which I thought I must ask him about this. You mentioned that presenteeism costs 1.8 times more than absenteeism. The question for you, therefore, is how can managers be better at spotting signs of stress and or anxiety in the workplace?
Just to notice when somebody is not themselves, out of character, and that might be performance, it might be mood or behavior, or it might be something to do with their appearance. And that is a feeling we often get in our guts when we're working with somebody, we're looking with somebody, and our senses are telling us that there's something up with this person. I think our instinct needs to be that when we experience the signs and the behaviors around poor mental health, our instinct needs to be that there is something wrong with this person's world. Not with them, they're not broken, but there's something kicking off and it's putting pressure on this person, or it's making them feel low, or there's been an event in their life that's bringing them down and taking them away from their ability to do the job that they could previously do. So our instinct is to notice and to have a adult conversation with them. So not parent-child. I'm not telling you what to do, not commander-in-chief. I'm not going to bark orders at you, but adult. So you and I can sit down, we can have a cup of coffee, and we can talk about the stuff that's going on and what support you need from me as a manager in order for you to get through a difficult time and keep working if possible. And work can be part of people's recovery. I'm not an advocate that as soon as somebody mentions mental health, they need to be kind of whisked off and wrapped up in cotton wool. That doesn't work for anybody. So it's really about noticing, talking, and coaching rather than trying to fix people's problems. And the last thing you want is your boss to turn around and pretend to be some sort of half-assed therapist. But you do need somebody to have your back during a difficult time, because it's going to happen. I know this, suffering is part of our lives. And if I talk about the big boulders that go in our rucksack, our backpack, they're things like financial, health issues, grief, bereavement, family stuff. They will happen from time to time. It's not that they might, they definitely will, multiple times. And during those periods, it's really hard for me to be at my best at work, but it makes a heck of a difference if there's somebody on my side. And that's really what I want from my manager. I don't want you to fix and solve my problems. You can't, but you can be there while I do it. And you can understand while I might not be 100%, but flexibility will go a long way. So that's an important way of keeping people well and at work.
Once in a while, an event series is born that shakes things up, it makes you think differently, and it leaves you inspired. That event is Disrupt HR. The format is 14 speakers, 5 minutes each, and slides rotate every 15 seconds. If you're an HR professional, a CEO, a technologist, or a community leader and you've got something to say about talent, culture, or technology, Disrupt is the place. It's coming soon to a city near you. Learn more at disrupthr.co.
Okay, thank you very much. So in your TED Talk, you use examples of a couple of folks. Both had grief. Both had recently lost someone, actually, to your point a moment ago. Use an example of, I think his name was Nick, who'd lost his mum. And there was a lady who worked for a charity who'd lost her dad recently. And you used the way that managers treated those two folks and reacted to their stress, their anxiety, their grief, which are both very different, as an example of, actually, you know what, if you get it right, your people will stick around. The lady who worked for the charity, I think you mentioned in the talk, she was still there. She'd been there for a number of years. She was in a much better place, productive, and so on and so forth. I've got a question here somewhere. That's a little bit, that's around, if you don't mind talking a bit about that connection between getting the support right for your people and retaining them for longer. Because this year, 2024, is all about retaining people. The projections are showing that folks will be sticking around for longer. I wonder if that's because mental health in the workplace is being better addressed. I don't know. Tell us more.
In the examples I gave, one was an old school, quite a brutal form of management. And the guy who lost his mum and his grief had turned into depression, Nick, he tried to speak up. He tried to get support that he was entitled to under UK law, as it happens, and he was denied that. So he then sought support from his doctor. He was signed off. He was in and out of work. He was trying to soldier on, but it became untenable. And eventually he left the organization with a significant payout. So that is an example of an organization really not applying a supportive process and method and losing out financially as a result. Right, and at the same time, we've got a really lovely guy who was good at his job. He would smash his appraisals 4 out of the past 5 years, who's now in pieces and on the sidelines. So we've got this sort of legal case and a moral case and a financial case, all pointing in the same direction, and that is, if my work space and place and my team is a psychologically safe place to work, if I can speak up, if I'm listened to, if I'm supported, I'm much more likely to stay. And that happens with the big events like happened to Nick, but it also happens in small events as well. So every day that I go to work, I'm making quite a complex set of decisions about whether or not what's my relationship like with my manager, what's my relationship like with the workplace, what's my relationship like with this job. And if I am under micro stresses, then I'm going to be questioning that relationship. And if something else comes up, I'm going to be more likely to be looking elsewhere for it. So if, as an organization or as a leader or as a manager, you want to keep your good people, Nick was definitely one of those, then it's worth investing in this idea that we need to create supportive cultures, and one where we recognize mental health as something that is not a sign that there's something wrong with me. It's a sign that there's something wrong in my world, and I can get the support while I manage that. And work can absolutely be part of people's recovery plan. Let's say, for example, I was going through a separation, divorce. My work is going to be very important to me as a structure, as a sense of community, the money. So, but equally, if I'm moving house or if I'm moving out, if I've got court cases or whatever it might be, you're not going to get 100% of me. I'm not going to be on my A game all day, every day during that time. So it's about figuring out that algorithm of what support is necessary, what can I do to get the best out of this person, what have they got, and to have the following question in your mind is not what they can't do, but what can they do. And I think when we start to look at this as a normal and quite natural process, we can take away a lot of the stigma, bring out the conversations that lead to resolution, and come up with a plan to help another human through a difficult time. And my goodness me, they will be loyal back. The loyalty that gets paid back will be double fold. I was with a guy who was a doctor on an air ambulance, so helicopters comes into nasty accidents, that kind of thing, and he had quite a traumatic incident that he had to attend to, and his medical director said, "You're not yourself, and we're going to take you off because we need you fit to fly, but we're going to take you off, and we need you to go and recuperate. We need you to understand what support you need and get that." And this was at the same time, I think his father was also dying in a hospital as well. So the organization really showed up for this guy, and a couple of months later, his father had died, but he'd got the support he needed, and they were short of a doctor on Christmas Day. And he was the first to put his hand up and go, "Look, I'll do this shift. Are you sure?" "Yeah, of course. You were there for me. I want this. I like my job. I want to do it." And he really showed up for the organization in return. And you get that a lot.
So as part of my homework, I was checking out, you recently, we were part of a webinar. It was a couple of weeks back, I think. And earlier on, you were talking about having grown-up conversations. On your description there for the webinar, it said that you believe that any employer can support any employee on mental health, but not at any cost. That was interesting. And then I was looking at something else. I don't know if it's one of your posts or something. And you were supporting employee mental health while keeping boundaries, you said. This is interesting. So it's terribly important to have the right conversations, to find ways to support people. But when does one overstep? But how can one keep those boundaries?
Okay, let's talk about an individual supporting an individual first.
Okay.
So when I am a care seeker, so there's stuff happening in my world, I need support, I'm a care seeker, and I go to my manager who's the caregiver. All right, what I want from my caregiver is somebody who has their feet on the firm ground. I want them to be well. I want them to guide me and listen to me and support me. But I do not want them to jump in the water with me and say, "Oh my God, this place is awful. The management is dreadful and the board. Oh my goodness, the work." I don't want that. So, as a caregiver, I need to be calm, kind, and curious, but I've got to be really careful not to try and fix everything or diagnose conditions or create some kind of pity party. I want to have an adult conversation with this person that means, yeah, we can talk about difficult stuff, but I'm not your therapist. And at the end of that conversation, you and I agree that you're going to have some appointments with a counsellor or get some further information about a legal situation you're going through, whatever it is, and I'll give you some time to have those appointments. So we agree that thing. And then I, as your caregiver, I'd stop doing that and I return to my firm ground, and I come back to being your manager. So we find a level for that conversation, and then I step back and I become your manager. So it's quite interesting to do that. I think that managers think they've got to have all the answers, and they don't. I think some of the best questions are that, what do you think is right for you at this time? What can we expect from you? What are you going to do to support yourself? So it's not the organization or the manager's role to do all the fixing and the sorting out. Yeah, we can facilitate some appointments, make up the time. Yeah, you can, we'll give you an office to make those difficult phone calls, while you talk to a counsellor. But we do need to keep that integrity on the worker workplace relationship. So when an organization is looking at this subject, so from an organizational point of view, I don't let everybody who says I'm experiencing mental health, this is not some kind of free-for-all where we can just kind of chuck our tools in the air and storm off the site. There are things that I can expect of you, and as an organization I need to put that process in place. So I need to have policies that call out what the absence procedure is. I need to have HR people who are trained to have these conversations. I need to have a charter, for example, where I will say what we will do and what we won't do. So people know what's what, and that is actually very helpful if I'm experiencing stress, anxiety, and depression, because those are times when my thinking might be more cloudy or a bit wobbly or full of anxiety. So it's helpful for me to have those structures. And if at the end of the day we've had the adult conversations, we've used the processes, and my behavior is still not appropriate, even if I've got a poor mental health condition, right? But mental health helps us understand poor behavior in the workplace, once, maybe twice, but it doesn't excuse it in the long run. So after we've exhausted the adult chats and the action plan and a bit of support and time off or whatever it is, after that, then there is a point where I go, look, we've done what we said we're going to do. It's your go. And we do have requirements from your role, and we need those met. So we need to now have a discussion about whether or not the role is still right for you, if the amount of days per week is right for you, some of the jobs. And we're always seeking to try and get a positive outcome with this. But, and it is a strong but, the end game is not always somebody staying at an organization or staying in their same role that's not appropriate. And sometimes, though this sounds mean to say, but it's not, sometimes we can set people free from a role or an organization that's giving them anxiety, that's exacerbating their depression, that is toxic and triggering for them. And they can draw a line under it and go and open up a new chapter somewhere else. Also, for the organization, we need to recognize that our instincts to support people, yes, but when people experience poor mental health and the behavior or the performance drops, that affects other people as well. So we don't just let it slide. We don't just kind of ignore it. We don't brush it under the carpet. We do offer flexibility, but we also sort it, and that's good for both sides. So the organization knows where it is, the team knows where it is, the individual knows where it is, and that kind of framework can really be helpful at a time when somebody feels lost.
Tom, we've got 2 minutes left of this particular conversation, so I'm going to challenge you, as I often do on this show. I like to mix things up. I'm going to challenge you in 60 seconds or less. Tell us about your super awesome, cool session at the Disrupt Cambridge, which is happening within the first Cambridge AI Summit. We've done a couple in Norwich. They seem to like them there. We're doing one in Peterborough as well. We're looking at some other places. This is the first one in Cambridge. You're kind enough to say that you're going to get involved in 60 seconds or less. Tease our listeners in terms of what they can expect from this session.
So AI and mental health and workplaces. Well, I like to keep things positive, Bill. So I am going to look at all the positive aspects of this. I'm not a techie, and I never will be. And I absolutely recognize that people are anxious about jobs at the moment. But I think that we do have some opportunities for improved work-life balance. I also think that we have some improved opportunities to manage workload and stress. And I also think that there are some potential mental health interventions that might be especially useful if I am an old school manager that does not know my way around this subject. So, you won't be surprised to know that I've had a few conversations with AI, and I was goading it. I was teasing it to be mean to the colleague who I wanted to kind of send this email to, and it wouldn't let me, Bill. So it doesn't carry all the stigma of the past thousands of generations where we have to be all masculine and tough it out. So I think there's a lot of hope, a lot of positivity, and I'll be focusing on that.
Excellent. I think you had about 4 seconds to spare. Very good. Okay, and just finally, Tom, how can folks connect with and learn more about you?
So I'm around on LinkedIn, and one of the best ways to connect with me is to try and find my TEDx talk, Workplace Mental Health, All You Need to Know for Now. There is another Tom Oxley, who's a neuroscientist talking about brainstems, and his talk's very good, but mine's about mental health. So find me on the TEDx talk on TED.com or YouTube or via LinkedIn.
Okay, excellent. Well, that just leaves me to say for today, Tom Oxley, you wonderful human being, thank you very much for being my guest. And listeners, as always, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to the HRchat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit HRgazette.com.